The House framework helps us think
Can you
about,
see
plan
this now?
for, and use teaching practices.
Yes.
This module highlighted the ways that teachers make learning meaningful to children. Hello and welcome to this short module on making learning meaningful for children. In this module, you'll gain new knowledge and skills, and you'll hear about the ways that teachers plan activities and interactions that support children's understanding of the world around them. Making learning meaningful fits into the foundation of our house. The House framework helps us think about, plan for, and use teaching practices that are important for achieving school readiness for all children. Engaging environments and interactions are the foundation.
What happened, Sarji?
You would have paused the video, sir.
No, I didn't.
I
didn't. Maybe I pressed in the Alexa button. It's a touch screen. That's why these problems do happen. No worry. I'll move ahead rather than waste time on this, because we all have our own problems. I discussed the first one, that the content and the process of the experience have to be integrated so that the children are able to develop their own concepts, and on the basis of those concepts build their own theories. And in the second, we said that when the children are having an experience, we need to provide them an environment in which they can reflect, they can think about safely, and they must have a lot of space also. Then the third is that the content must always be related to life. The content of the experience must be relevant to the children. Don't give them experiences which are too far-fetched, where there is a lot of play for imagination. The fourth, always keep the big picture in mind. Let it not be atomistic in the way of a stimuli with an organism in between and a response. No. Let them develop the factual way of looking at things. Veridicality is the word that I used, because there are certain logical statements in terms of semiotics. We call them, they stand for truth. Let them learn experiences as they are, and at the same time arrive at truthful conclusions rather than false prejudices of their own. Please help them to build their own reflection on the experience. Whatever learning opportunity they get, they should use that and incorporate that reflection, incorporate that thinking about that experience into their way of life. Sixth, engage them, inspire them, get them interested in the activity. Then only there will be an emotional contact between what they are experiencing and what they are learning. Learning is primarily emotions. I mean, there has to be an effective content in learning. So engage students so that they strike a kind of a personal chord which is central to them between the learner and their emotions. The seventh, whatever values the child brings to class, they are values that are existing in the society. Sometimes there are biases, sometimes there are fallacies, sometimes there are legions with which he comes, sometimes he has been brought up on fables, theoretical assumptions, religious bigotry. He comes with all these values to the school. But when he has an experience, his values must change. He must give up those prejudices which in the practical experience of life have been found out not to be truthful, not to be holding good. You cannot tell him that there is a mountain absolutely covered with snow somewhere very close to Nepal, which we call as the Kailash Parvat, and there Lord Shiva reigns supreme. He will question you. He will say, madam, my blood freezes at -16. Nobody can survive. Lord Shiva, even though he may not be a human being, cannot survive. Do you tell me, madam, that he is a form of energy? Oh, yes, that's what I wanted to tell you. We have given him a human form only so that human beings can concentrate on a form. Otherwise, he cannot live the way we present him. So sometimes the prejudices, sometimes the biases that he has have to be given up on the basis of experience, and he has to create new choices. His greatness will come out of his choice. Please help him to realize that he has to model relationships, that 1 + 1 does not make only 2. It brings in a synergy in the system. I'm not talking of teamwork, my dear friends. I'm talking of collaboration. A school is not made of mortar and bricks. Classrooms do not mean a school. Somebody told me, sir, what do you see in the schools? I said, I don't see any schools, because a school comes to life only when there are children. A school comes to life only when teachers are teaching, children are playing. There's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of activity. Then only we call it a school. Let us see this relationship of all the stakeholders uniting hands together to build something. So if he is able to integrate relationships, he can build concepts. A very difficult thing I'm talking to you. I have done this testing. I drew 2 lines on the blackboard. One was a little inclined, the other was inclined downwards. Trust me, I drew them using a foot ruler and they were same length. And I asked the children, what do you find in the length or the difference in the length of the two? The line that was at the top, they said that was bigger. In Ajmer, when I was doing my research on cognitive psychology, I took a small piece of a pancake, a plasticine clay. I molded it and gave it the shape of a ball, and the other ball which was lying there, the same weight, the same mass, I gave it the shape of a cake, like a roti you make it. And then I put it in my 2 hands and asked the children, which one of them is heavier? They said the one that is baked more is heavier. I put some water in a jug, in a tumbler, which was thinner, narrower, and went upwards. The water rose to a great height. Then I put water into a beaker. I said, which contains more water? They said, the one where it rose. There was no conservation of volume. There was no conservation of length. There was no conservation of mass. And that's what I was trying to prove. I was trying to prove that the ability of conservation comes at the age of 7 to 8. In Indian situations, it could be between 7 to 8. Otherwise, outside in Europe, it comes at the age of 5 to 6. Now, this integrated pattern of thinking, that 2 common things were taken up, the shapes have changed, the mass has not. It was difficult for the children to realize. It's very important that when life is an experience, you have to come out of your comfort zones. The children will also have to come out of their comfort zones, because every experience will add something new to them. We call this kind of learning as transformative learning. You are learning whatever you have learned. It has put you in a zone where it is easy to use that learning, and these notions, this thinking is preconceived now. But the moment you start experiencing and you had a new experience, it brings you out of your comfort zone. You have to adapt to new circumstances, new situations, and new normals. Now, what will you choose? Will you go ahead with your old conceived ideas, preconceived thinking, which has made life so easy for you for the past 40, 50 years or 30 years? Or will you go the other way and use an experience? Or will you find some other way? Let's look at it. 2 assumptions are to be borne in mind when you choose. People learn in every possible way. Predominantly, they learn from their experience. What they see today happening in front of their eyes, how it happens, why it happens, here it happens, they learn. That does not mean they do not learn from books. That does not mean if you teach them about concepts, they do not learn. I didn't say that. My first assumption is people learn from books, they learn from concepts, but they learn more and much more from immediate experiences that they have in life. My second assumption is that everybody does not learn in the same way. Everybody has his own style of learning, and everybody has a preferred style of learning. You see, when somebody gave me a test, I was found to be an auditory and tactile learner. I laughed at them. I said, how is that possible? I remember everything that I see. I remember your face, and if you meet me after 10 years, I will be able to tell you who you are. They said, well, then they explained it to me. Professor Andu, everybody is a visual learner. Everybody is a tactile learner. Everybody is an auditory learner. Everybody is a kinesthetic learner. These are the 4 styles of learning. But because of the environment in which you have been brought up, we develop a preference for 1 or 2 styles. As teachers, we predominantly are tactile learners because we are terribly emotional. We are touchy about things. Whatever we touch with our hands, we are not likely to forget that. That could be our preferred style. So keep these two assumptions in mind. Number one, a learner learns from books and concepts, but he learns more from experiences. Second, all learners are different. Their styles of learning are different. Now, in the light of these two assumptions, let us apply these assumptions to our model. The core of our model is a learning cycle, a cycle which begins with an experience and moves back to the same experience. How does it begin? Experience is reflected upon, thought upon, and it gets translated into certain concepts. And these concepts become our guides for a new experience. You saw that cycle where we started with an experience which was concrete, then we went for a reflection which was an observation, then we went for an abstraction which was theorizing, and then finally we went for active experimentation, or what we call as AE. People are taught to learn through experience, but this is viewed as a four-stage cycle. What are the four stages? Number one, provide a learner with an experience which is immediate and which is concrete. Don't tell him tomorrow you will do this. That's not an experience. The experience should come right now. The experience has to be immediate and the experience has to be tangible, where the child participates. He can catch hold of things, he can see things, he can touch things. And on the basis of this experience, he comes to the second stage. He observes things, he thinks about them, and he reflects on them. Then he moves to the third stage. What is his third stage? On the basis of observation and his reflection, he accommodates his mental structure, he assimilates a lot of information, he distills that information, he separates the particles, the trash from the genuine, the fact from the fake, and ultimately develops a concept or a theory of a concept. And he has some new knowledge with him, some new implications with him. Now, with these new implications, he goes out and tests them in either a same situation, or he gathers new experiences, he creates new experiences. This is the cycle that he follows. I give you examples. Some examples. I cannot give you all of them here. For example, why don't you teach children about weather patterns by going out? How many of you have taught them about the cirrus and the nimbus clouds? How many of you have taught them, who are living very close to the sea or the lake, about the land breeze and the sea breeze? There. Have you taught your children as to what are deciduous trees, how water erosion occurs? These are real examples that are happening or possibly can be seen in life. Why don't you teach them addition and subtraction, or addition and multiplication? Multiplication is repetitive addition. By observing plant growth and reproduction in their own school garden. Why don't you teach them grammar, like parts of speech, by naming children? Ashok becomes the noun, and Nilima becomes the pronoun. Shweta becomes an adjective, whereas Ram becomes an adverb. So they hang these small nameplates around them. And then when you complete a sentence, you ask them to put themselves. So they put themselves in an order. And you understand how a sentence can be framed. What is SVO, what is SOV, how there should be an engagement or an enlargement to the verb or an extension to the verb, how a subject can be taking the place of the object and the object can come place, or make them label themselves as punctuation marks. Write a sentence and tell them to come in between, within the sentence, to fill in and complete the sentence with its punctuation marks. Some examples only. I come to the four different abilities, back to the cycle. The first, concrete experience to be given to the children. After the concrete experience, they come back, they reflect upon the experience and observe and discuss it with their friends and groups. Now, after this experience, they start forming their own concepts, which are not concrete, which are abstract, generalized theories, not applicable to real life as yet, unless they are tested and proved correct. The testing comes in the last stage, which is the active experimentation stage. A good learner will always involve himself fully in the experience. You cannot be watching from a distance and saying that I am experiencing something. You are not. We have two varieties of people. I'll just now in the next slide tell you about the doers and the watchers. Those who get into the activity and do it, and those who watch them. I remember when I went to learn swimming as a child. Today I think of it. That time I didn't think. I didn't have this much of knowledge that I could compare this experience. There were many of our students who said, you go and start swimming, we will watch you first. If you do not get drowned, then also we will swim. Then only we will swim, otherwise not. So they were the watchers, cautious, careful people who would watch how we are moving our arms and feet in the water, how we are floating on the surface of the water. And while as we were unmindful, we jumped into the water, God alone will save us. And we will move what our teacher did. We experienced swimming that way. So there are people who will involve themselves fully in an experience. They have no biases. They have no prejudices. Then when they come back from the experience, they will think about the experience. They'll discuss it with their friends and they will form their own perspectives. The third stage will come now. They will build up sound theories which are logically correct. They will not build up a theory that because the earth, had it been moving around the sun, and as it moves around the sun, we would get inverted and we would be falling down. This is illogical. They will create those kinds of concepts that are integrated with their observation. Their experience has given them some knowledge. They have reflected on that knowledge. And from the basis of that knowledge, they have combined two or more concepts and they have built up a theory. Now they use this theory to solve further problems of their life. Will you trust me? At a party where more than 100 or 200 bottles of Coca-Cola were consumed and the children were present there, I asked my children to collect all the bottle caps. They collected all the bottle caps. I said, now put them in some kind of a sequence where I can recognize them. I found out that the Limca caps were separate than the Coca-Cola caps. I found that the thumbs up caps were different from the Red Bull caps. I said, why did you do it? Sir, they belong to the Red Bull category. They had already learned the ability of classification. This is a mental ability. In Piagetian concepts, we call it classification. In biology and in history, it's very important. We go to the secondary classification or what you call a sub-classification. See, when you teach children, you tell them there are three main modes of transport. We have the mode of communication by air, mode of communication on road, mode of communication by water. But when you come to water, you say the mode of communication in water can be, you can use a sailboat, you can use a ship, you can use a motorboat, you can use a yacht, or if you like to go down, you can use a submarine. So you have a sub-classification within a classification also. Now, once they have made this observation, they solve their future problems on the basis of their active experimentation. But every child has to give up his place of prejudice. Every child has to leave his bias. His performance will improve. His learning will become effective if he is flexible. Rigid people do not learn. I have heard teachers saying, sir, that child in my class is a hard nut to crack. Lovely sentence, I have heard this. I say, I entirely agree with you, but you have to make him a little flexible. Sir, I can break his back, but I cannot bend him to do this work. I say, give him an experience. You have been lecturing at him. He doesn't follow your lectures. He doesn't like listening to a talk. He likes to be getting involved. And the moment one day, the child was taken to a place, I don't remember which place it was, where he was exposed to parallel mirrors. He started asking questions of the teacher. Why are there so many of me's? I see 20 me's on my right and I see 20 me's on my left. The teacher explained to him the laws of reflection, explained to him that every image became an object for the other mirror, and then he started actively getting involved in the portion of physics which we call as optics. It was very easy to teach him. Flexibility is important. If you are a good learner, you have to be flexible, you have to adapt, and your performance will increase. I give you some more examples. Can you teach physics to the children while playing cricket? I was taught like that. I was taught bring your knee and your elbow and your bat handle in one line. They should be in a straight line. Your bat should be inclined at an angle of 45 degrees then only you can meet the ball. If the ball is coming at a faster pace, let the ball hit the bat. Don't hit the ball yourself, because the bat, as a force of reaction, will automatically apply the same force on the ball. You don't make an effort of hitting it. Allow the speed of the ball to get translated into its reaction. Now, how much distance will you travel? I would like to create a little humorous kind of a situation. In Kashmir, we have a lot of snow, and very soon the snow freezes. And a student who was a late Latif, we used to call him late Latif, the teacher also used to call him late Latif, he would every day come late to school. And one day when it snowed and it froze, he came again as usual late, and the teacher said, "You are late today also?" He said, "Masterji, what could I do? As I moved one step forward, I slipped 2 steps backwards." We all laughed, but this is possible. You can slip. The Masterji was a sharp man. He said, "My son, if you slept 2 steps backwards, you should have been then either at home or more away from the home, from the school as well as the home. How did you reach the school?" He said, "Sir, I started walking towards my home and I slipped backwards 2 steps towards the school." Now that's an interesting experience, and he was a very clever boy. Why don't you teach history to your children by conducting debates? I did once, I've not been a student of history much, but I did teach about Humayun, doing an activity which Amitabh Bachchan is very fond of doing in the KBC. I asked a boy if he would like to be Humayun. I had given him an activity that you read the chapter. I need Renu Mishra was the teacher. I need her for a day. She has to be busy somewhere. So you read the chapter yourself. And they were lovely children. No noise, no disturbance. They all studied and studied it at home. They knew sir would positively come to the class. And as usual, as per my promise, I went to the class. I said, "Who would like to be Humayun?" One boy got up. I said, "You must look at the personality of Humayun. Was he tall? Was he short? Was he very hefty? Was he very thin? Give me somebody who almost resembles him. If not 100%, at least 50%. So a boy finally came up and said, "Sir, I do resemble him." I said, "Come on, my son, take a chair." I said, "Every one of you open your books. Whatever you have read about Humayun, fire questions at him. If he answers your question, I'm sorry, you lose. If he does not answer the question, you come here and take his seat. You become Humayun, you go back." I was doing an activity which we call in social sciences hot seating. Now it was an experience. And do you know what was the first question? "How old are you?" Brilliant answer. "I'm 13 years old." They said, "Sir, you are Humayun." He said, "Yes, I have only come today and sat on the throne." Humayun was 13 years old when he came to the throne. I didn't know that. I quietly asked Renu in my ear. She said, "Sir, I also do not know that. We will check from the book, sir, but he has read it thoroughly." So you can understand, when you enact debates, battle scenes, or important events, it's an experience. You can teach your children a lot about critical thinking, which we generally do by asking questions with why and how. When you start discussions, when you organize them into groups and tell them that there should be an individual presentation by a group member, others will be assisting in making the presentation. This could be also a presentation. In active experimentation, that's the 4th stage, you will come to 2 types of people. The doers, who are always active in experimentation. They love whatever they have learned to put it to use. They would jump into the river like I did and learn how to swim. While as there are others who would not, who would say, "Let me watch what happens to him. Let me reflect on this more. Let me see how he moves his hands and arms. Let me see if he comes alive out of the swimming pool. Then only I'll go. Is the water very cold?" So they are known as watchers. They are reflective observers. Both are important. There's a choice to be made whether you would like to be a watcher or a doer. It's almost impossible that you cannot balance both of them. Supposing most of you are driving cars, is it possible for you to drive a car, actually do an action, and at the same time read a manual about how to drive a car? You can't do these 2 things. Either you read the manual, reflect upon the manual, so you are a watcher. Now when you are on the steering, then you are a doer. Now, how is this conflict of choice resolved? Do we take a decision ourselves about choosing what course of action we take? Now, this choice is made by our genes. Our heredity equipment makes us to take risks. Some of us are risk takers. Some of us are entrepreneurs. While as some of us are very careful, we would like to कहते हैं ना दूध को भी फूक फूक के पीना, वो रस्सी का जला कि छाछ, दूध का जला छाछ को भी फूक फूक के पीता है. I mean, we would love to take every step after a lot of caution. Sometimes this choice is made based on our past experiences. Last time, I tried to get into the water, I almost drowned myself. I don't want to go another time there. Or you prefer a way. You prefer sometimes in certain situations, you prefer to be a doer. In certain other situations, you prefer to be a watcher. And on the basis of this, develops a model which perhaps if you have attended some workshops, I mean, very few of our trainers must have talked about this. We call it the ADAC model, ADAC, 4 letters ADAC, capital A, capital D, capital A, capital C. But here the order is changed. C is converger. A person who always loves to arrive at a converging point. His thinking is convergent, his doing is convergent. He would always think of the result. While as a diverger, he would explore more and more ways of doing things. His model of learning is, let us try this possibility also. Let us try this kind of an experience also. And the last two are very important because they come from the behavioristic school. Assimilation of information is gathering information. Bloom's taxonomy gives us knowledge. We add meaning to that knowledge and we move to the second level, which we call as understanding. And assimilation is almost concept formation. And accommodation is a new piece of knowledge has come to me. I have to adapt my brain structures and patterns of thinking, wherein this new knowledge can be accommodated. If this new knowledge cannot be accommodated, God save you. I had taught a 3-year, 4-year-old child. There was a small pup at my home. We would always call him, don't touch the doggy, he will bite you. Don't touch the doggy, he will bite you. One day we went to a party where there was a cat in the house. He said to every other child, don't touch the doggy, he will bite you. He did not know that the other 4-legged animal wasn't a dog. It was a cat. He had not assimilated and accommodated this information. For him, every 4-legged creature was a dog. I have come across an example. I asked a gentleman, look at that animal across the river on the other side of the garden adjacent to our house. He looked at it, he said, what is new about it? We see these stray dogs moving everywhere. I said, sir, please look carefully. He said, I've looked at him carefully. He's brown in color. The face is a little longer. The tail is not wagging. He's a dog. I said, bloody hell. You have not been able to discriminate between a dog and a jackal as yet. He's not a dog, he's a jackal. I mean, the differences are found out and concepts are built only on the basis of similarities and dissimilarities. It's only when you differentiate between two things that the concept becomes clear. When you ask your child to compare, he generalizes. When you ask him to contrast, find the differences between the two, his concept formation becomes more clear. That's where you accommodate new knowledge to your brain structure. Learn to converge to a point, learn to diverge your thinking, learn to assimilate information, and learn to accommodate that information within your structure. I had another video, I'm not sure whether it works. No, they have all decided not to work for me today. I'll show that video to you at the end. Usually I have seen people growing in 4 main areas of their life. This applies to all of us. It applied to me, it's applying to me daily. It applies to all of you. Now look at these 4 areas of life, very simple. Number 1, you will have recognized this organ is the most important one. I won't tell you the title of that film, Ye Dil Ka Mamla Hai. You always develop knowledge by sensing it, by feeling it. Some of you say, I have an intuition. Some of you regard yourselves as psychic. Some of you say, no, I had a vision. But most of the knowledge is gathered effectively also. You feel, you have a perception, you have a sensation that you receive from the 5 senses. And as this sensation reaches your brain, it sends neuronic signals through the fibers. And these signals somewhere record some kind of a meaning. It becomes a perception. Now this feeling is almost emotional. All learning must be connected with the emotions. If you do not connect learning with emotions of joy, emotions of love, emotions of sharing, emotions of compassion, you won't help children to learn. The other way of learning is symbolically. The policeman at the beat raises his hand. It means the red light is there, we must all stop. It's a symbol for us. The teacher raises his finger and puts it to his lips. It means we must all keep quiet. The teacher taps on the desk. It means there is some kind of a noise, we must stop. There are lots of symbols. I was driving along the road and I saw a big placard indicating a boy, a school boy with a school bag running. I could at once realize that there is a school in the vicinity. I must drive slowly. I saw a zebra crossing. I knew, oh my God, here I must stop my car because this is the path for the people to cross from one side to another. The symbols also help in our thinking skills and in our cognition. And then whatever we do with our hands, with our arms, with our fingers, we change our behavior and we learn skills. Our behavior enables us to develop skills. Effectively we learn, symbolically we learn, and behaviorally we learn. If I start getting angry and shouting at my friends within the family, I'll start doing it daily and everybody will say, Professor Andu always gets angry and his behavior has become bad. He's an angry man now. And the last one is perceptual skills. This skill used to be very great in us in my school days, but not now. This is developing observation skills. Early morning, before even I had my breakfast and was ready for the school, my father would put that old newspaper of our city, which was printed in Urdu language in front of me. And on the first page of that, there were two pictures. And above was a title. These two pictures have 10 meanings, identify them. And I had to observe both the pictures very carefully to mark what were the differences. For example, one picture had 3 windows, the other had only 2. One had a flower vase without flowers, the other had a flower vase with flowers. Now, skill of observation is very important if you want to gather knowledge perceptually. My purpose of giving you these 4, I go back, was only that whenever you engage your children in experience, see that they gain knowledge by sensing, see that they gain knowledge by thinking, see that they gain knowledge by through their skills of behavior, and they gain knowledge by perceiving. The 5 stages in the skill development, or the 4 stages, will be: the acquisition stage is important. When you gather information, you specialize on that information, and then you integrate that information with your own body of knowledge. I'll be concluding this with this diagram. I want you to look at this diagram very carefully. Provide the children with an experience relevant to the content, give them space, give them time, give them enough of comfort, let them experience it. After the experience, let them come back to the class, or they are already in the class. If the experience has been given, let them share the information in the groups. Let them observe, let them reflect, let them introspect. And out of this sharing and experiencing, they will come to processing this information. Whatever experience or whatever information they have gained, they will process it in their brains. As they process it, they will arrive at certain inductive thinking, some kind of a logic where they generalize concepts. They say, because I ate an apple which was hard and it was green, then I ate another apple, it was also hard, it was also green, and both the apples were sour. Therefore, all hard and green apples are sour. So from particular incidents, he has come to a generalized statement. And now he applies this knowledge. He applies this knowledge and comes back to the experience. The cycle moves on. This way of teaching, learning, where you provide the children with an experience, they introspect on that experience, they make an observation and a mental logic framework wherein they build up a hypothesis, arrive at a generalization, then they apply this generalization in a new experience, is called experiential learning. If you want to teach your children about teamwork and leadership, don't lecture at them. Let them do some kind of a scavenger hunt. You saw that in that wonderful movie. What was that called? I'm forgetting the name. Student of the Year. In the Student of the Year, there was a scavenger hunt organized. You had to reach point A, where you had to find something for which a hint was given to you. And if you found that thing, it would give you a hint to go to the second place. Now this, because you are working in a group, you are all putting your brains together. You are all putting your energies together. Synergy comes into the system. But do this activity related to school subjects. If you want to teach your children more about perseverance, forbearance, courage, and leadership, take them on hikes. It was an integral part of my school days. We had to go on a hike for 3 days and 3 nights to the peaks of Harishwar or Mahadev, we used to call it in Srinagar. Tyndall Biscu School in Srinagar is still conducting these programs. Or we had to go for whitewater rafting, which is done in Nainital, Mussoorie. Expeditions like sports trips or navigation explorations. But whenever you organize these activities, please do not be after them. Make the children into buddies, 2 of them making a group or a team, 2 buddies, 5 such buddies having a team leader or a group leader, and 10 such teams of 20 people each having a leader. So a student learns how to lead. It improves upon their morale. It teaches them how to give directions and how to organize things. But where do we start, sir? When you go back, how will you begin? Set a goal for yourself. Look at the lessons that you are going to teach. What is the aim and objective of your teaching? I know it is to pass the examination. Passing examination is very important, but you also want that there should be a change in their behavior and they should learn. So what are the experiential learning that you will choose in some of the lessons that you will do? Which one of these activities will you do within the classes? Which one will you do outdoors? Number 1. Number 2, what are the ways of incorporating these hands-on activities or hands-on learning activities along with the curriculum? Number 3, do I need to take the principal's permission or the administrator's permission or the coordinator's permission or the dean's permission? If you need to take the permission, you must not do these activities without proper permission, whether they are to be done inside the class or outside the class. Because then as you talk of the activity to your worthy principal, he also will come to know that there is an activity like this. Or your coordinator, the coordinator may advise the other class that, look here, in this class, such and such teacher took up this activity. Why don't you also try something like that? And then you must always have freedom, have autonomy. You can experiment with this activity even after school. I have seen many teachers requesting the children that on a particular day, we will stay back for an hour. Please tell your parents tomorrow you will be coming half an hour late. I'll see that the school bus drops you at your home. They have an activity which could be a dramatic activity, which could be an activity where they go for an election of their class monitor, which could be an activity which you call as the MAN nowadays, where a bill becomes a law, where they show them how a parliament is in action or the United Nations is in action. So such activities can also be done, but you must have liberty of doing them and correlating it with the content that you have. I wish you the best, and I am ready for the questions that you have, if any there are. Dr. Saab, is there a question that needs